America and people who aren't in America, welcome to the show. Young Turks, everybody. Kind of start I was looking for. Ben Mankiewicz, Ambry Allen, Brett Ehrlich, hour one of the Young Turks. Cenk and Anna are off today or otherwise preoccupied.
Thank God.
Brett, of course, you know him from, well, you probably don't know Brett. Most people don't.
It's fine.
Yeah. No, Brett is part of the, so is this your full-time job now? Or are you,
it's classified on my tax returns as a full-time job.
Now, who knows how those tax returns are gonna work?
Yeah, exactly. My tax return will eventually fit on this index card.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it'll be an enormous index card. It'll be a room-size index card. But yeah, this is my full-time job. Catch me on Pop Trigger.
Right, that's right.
When not on this show.
Ambry Allen, TV host, comedian. She's been here before. I mean, I've been here on 4 or 5 shows with you. You probably don't only come in when I'm here, so you've probably been on more. But thank you both for being here. So we'll begin with a story, the kind of story that I hate. Which I think is also a good way to start off a show by telling you that the story that we're about to do is loathsome. It's because this is when people say they hate politics, right? Mostly that's a cop-out to not understand what politics is about. Because if you're interested in sort of exciting debate about things that affect the world, you know, that has aspects of a horse race sometimes, that has a competitive nature, which I think most people like. You would love politics, right? But here, we're about to get into just sort of nonsense that we know will ultimately resolve itself in some way with a meeting or not a meeting. But here's a story about a non-meeting with both sides trying to spin it. And in this case, although I object to the way Trump spins it more, I don't know that we're going to throw our arms around Chuck Schumer and say this is the way to do it. What we're looking at here is a possibility that the government will shut down, I think by the end of next week. Is that correct? Everybody's understanding? So. It's coming up.
Yeah.
So we need a meeting, an agreement we need to come up with at least a temporary funding mechanism to keep the government going, on the theory that we're not going to get a big budget passed and a big funding mechanism, but something that will keep the government going, a shutdown of government, which almost invariably, I think every single time, has hurt Republicans politically. Maybe I'm forgetting one, but every time the government is shut down, basically because that's the party that likes shutting the government down. They like it when things don't work. That suits them well. But in this case, Trump tweeted this morning the following. This would be the Trump tweet. Meeting with Chuck and Nancy, which he put in quotes as if to suggest that their names are not Chuck and Nancy, but those are their names.
Normally when you credit someone together, you have to use an ampersand.
Is that right?
That is for the SAG rules and the WGA rules.
Know,
weird. It's weird that Trump not following union rules. Meeting with Chuck and Nancy, otherwise known as Chuck and Nancy, today about keeping government open and working. Problem is, they want illegal immigrants flooding into our country, unchecked, our week on crime, and want to substantially super loud raise taxes. Oh, sorry, raise taxes.
Right, you must emphasize raise more for it is in all caps, but really don't underemphasize.
Country crime, raise taxes.
Yes,
I don't see a deal. So again, I mean, you know, if this were the first tweet that he had sent in this manner, that would be shocking. I mean, it's wrong, it is insulting, it's degrading, it is wildly misleading, as if Pelosi and Schumer are advocating a new policy of allowing illegal immigrants to flood into the country. They don't want to raise taxes. I wish they did. I wish they were advocating a plan to raise taxes, to at least at a bare minimum restore taxes to the thriving 90s level of the Clinton administration. But no, what they want to do is prevent you from cutting taxes, which is the problem always when one party advocates cutting taxes, is that then if you're against it, you're against something that in general, without attaching it to anything, every American wants. Yeah. Everybody wants their taxes lowered.
You were talking about people being able to wrap their mind around politics and saying, like, I hate politicians as a cop-out for that. There are things when I look at this interaction between the two that I can wrap my mind around. I can wrap my mind around Trump wanting to go into a meeting with Chuck and Nancy after his previous meeting with Chuck and Nancy, which seemed like he was abandoning the Republicans.
Right.
And he's now in this weird position. He's managed to alienate his base at times by endorsing Luther Strange. And he's been able to alienate the establishment Republicans by going into a meeting with Chuck and Nancy. It seems like he probably was most recently in a room with someone from the Republican establishment and wanted to alienate these two. The other thing I can think of is he's trying to find any and all reason to paint this well if his tax proposal doesn't go through.
That's right, that's right. He wants to blame them.
Yeah,
right.
Agreed. I think this is kind of postured as a corrective to their previous meeting, which he received a lot of backlash from his base. And kind of also contributing to this narrative that they're obstructionists, right? So then we move away from this meeting, which is about the budget, right, to all of these other issues about raising taxes and being tough on crime, right? So it's a complete distraction that panders to the base and again paints the picture that Dems are being obstructionists.
The Dems being obstructionists is a great notion because, of course, that would remind the president that he has a majority in both houses. So the fact that he has passed 0 pieces of legislation is on the obstructionist Republicans, who are actually obstructionists. In many cases, stuff didn't pass for the right reasons. But in general, that is a party caused by people who want to not pass legislation because they don't think government should do much. They want a small, limited government. So painting the Democrats as obstructionists is rich. What's also interesting about, well, not interesting about it, what is typical about it is that it's Trump at his most Trumpy. Like what he thinks I imagine this is the sort of thing pre-Twitter and pre-presidency that he would do because he fancies himself a skilled negotiator, right? So you sort of belittle the other side so they come in defensive and have to give you what you want. Again, reason 1,186 of how he does not understand the job that he has. So anyway, the response, I've now talked myself into approving of Chuck Schumer's response a little bit. It's still lame. It's still lame, but I get it. If somebody's going to send a tweet about that in the morning, not going to the meeting is the right thing to do. Here is Chuck Schumer's response to Donald Trump's tweet.
We had hoped to make progress with the administration on these issues in a meeting this afternoon. Unfortunately, this morning, instead of leading, the president tweeted a blatantly inaccurate statement and then concluded, "I don't see a deal." The president said, "I don't see a deal," 3 hours before our meeting, before he heard anything we had to say. Given that the president doesn't see a deal between Democrats in the White House, Leader Pelosi and I believe the best path forward is to continue negotiating with our Republican counterparts in Congress instead. Rather than going to the White House for a show meeting that won't result in an agreement from a president who doesn't see a deal, we've asked Leader McConnell and Speaker Ryan to meet with us this afternoon. If the president, who already earlier this year said, quote, "Our country needs a good shutdown," if the president isn't interested in addressing the difficult year agenda and wants to make the government shut down, we'll work with those Republicans who are interested in funding the government, as we did in April.
That was great. I don't know, man. I wanted to get out of my chair and just cheer.
You did want to get out of your chair and cheer a cadence.
But it's more than just the cadence. You did want to get out of your chair and cheer a cadence. It's right there. You don't have to look down every word. Like, you've got it. And so the problem is that he says Trump's lying, and Trump, of course, is not. They are both lying because they're all just for show. So you want moments that at least seem like reality and that maybe even give you reality, which would be Schumer saying, and I don't understand why politics doesn't quite work this way. Why Schumer goes, did you see the Trump's tweet, meeting with Chuck and Nancy today about keeping government open? Working problem is that they want illegal immigrants flooding our country unchecked, weak on crime, substantially raise taxes. Why would I meet with a clown who said that? Why would I listen to that and then go into a meeting with him? If the president wants a serious meeting, he knows where we are. We can have a meeting, but I'm not going in like that, and I wouldn't let Nancy Pelosi go. I would advise Nancy Pelosi not to go in either. It's this sort of it's this stock response about go in for a show meeting. Well, it's a show meeting, and you're also giving a show statement about the show meeting. It's all for show. You disagree?
Yeah. Well, I think that Trump has a way of setting up issues in a way that it's almost impossible to have the right response. Because I think that response would similarly look ridiculous.
Why would that look ridiculous? It's so honest. Like, why would I go to a meeting with a guy? We're prepared to go into this meeting, and he sends a tweet saying there's no deal done, and he mischaracterizes what we believe. F that guy.
Okay, that is what he says. He says he sent out this tweet. It's ridiculous. Therefore, it's a waste of time.
Some of this is real quick, Brad. I'm sorry. Some of this is style over substance. I think that little speech by Chuck Schumer sends a message of inauthenticity to America and makes it very easy for people to say the thing that bothers me most, that bothered me from the left in the previous election that we had. It was in November of last year. That, hey man, they're just the same. Like I hate that stuff. I hate it. I hate it with a passion, and I think that people who have an audience are duty bound to inform and not encourage that manner of thinking. But it's hard to do when Chuck Schumer gives you that.
Chuck Schumer's also a grandfather, and I think he has handled a tantrum before, and I would like to see him channel that thing that's easy to wrap your head around, which is a grandfather handling a child who's having a tantrum, which is if Chuck Schumer just says, "Are you done? You wanted me to come in and I thought we were gonna have a conversation."
Sure, okay.
What was that?
Style.
Are you done?
Maybe that's better.
But
still,
they're both
they're
like
genuine.
the clown
Right.
things.
Yeah.
But it feels with Chuck Schumer like and all of these clowns is that they have. It feels like you're designing a superhero, like your character in like a Dungeons and Dragons type game where you have only so many points to assign skill-wise. And you have like, with Trump, his communication skill is like through the roof. His ability to like get his message through the din is through the roof, but his intelligence is way down here. Chuck Schumer, it's like he needs to dial up that communication lever to assign some of his points. I don't know where all his points are. Maybe he's a master behind the scenes tactician, but he definitely cannot communicate in an authentic way, that the way that everyone not only wants him to, but needs him to at this moment.
I guess what we have to remember is that these statements, at least, Trump's is for America, Trump's is for his base, and Trump's is an excellent point by both of you guys to remind everybody that this was an effort to get past the last beating he took from Republicans for making a deal with Chuck and Nancy, and he initially was like, "Hey, this was great. They came in. We got something done." Right. So there's that. But their response is not really for us. Their response is for Washington.
Right.
Chuck is talking to other Democrats, and Chuck is talking to the media, and Chuck is setting up a manner of how this is going to play out, and of not backing down to Trump. So I get that. It is just frustrating to me continually not get, it seems to me, the very thing that caused a candidate, not like Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders, to break through. A degree and Trump, a degree of plain spoken authenticity, which I would take advantage of again and again and again in these situations, which these guys, first of all, stop saying the words Leader Pelosi. It does sound super communist to me.
Yeah,
Every
really
time
does.
I hear it, I hate it.
It does, like Star Wars and communists at the same time. Leader Pelosi met with Chancellor Valorum this morning.
Hilarious.
But they're not capable of it. They're not suddenly going to start being. It's not their thing.
I also want, part of the authentic response should be to point out something else about Trump's tweet, which is, yes, obviously he's like going, I'm going to shake you up before our meeting today to put you on the back foot. But I want them to not only say like, are you done? It's not only ridiculous that you're throwing a tantrum before we come meet you, but like everything you're saying is ludicrous. And as you referred to earlier, go through 3 things in a row. Like what we want, no one wants to flood the streets with anything. Like no one wants to do that.
No one likes a flood.
No one likes the flood. No one wants to raise your taxes. We especially don't like we're trying to get you to stop doing the things you're doing with taxes, which is raising taxes, and then identify the people that are going to have to end up paying an effectively higher tax rate in the near and far term.
So the response, Nancy Pelosi said essentially the same thing that Chuck Schumer said. We'll leave that out, but Sarah Huckabee Sanders responded to this as she is so capable of. Here's what Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the president's spokesman, said. The president's invitation to the Democratic leaders still stands, and he encourages them to put aside their pettiness, stop the political grandstanding, show up and get to work. Stop the political grandstanding. You open the day with a tweet with a bunch of capital letters. You know, I mean, you were the ultimate political grandstander.
Yeah, and then the meeting that followed, right, with the empty seats, that's political pettiness. Like the theatrics, all of that is ridiculous. And if anything, it shows his complete inability to take something that he presents as so serious, not seriously.
But but you make a great point in that so they have the meeting and they have the empty seats in the meeting. And this is where you got to be careful. Like I'm not 100% sure that the Democrats are going to win that battle with those empty seats. So far, every shutdown they've won. They are standing on a much more significant principle here, a tax plan that has been pretty accurately portrayed as being massively top-heavy, and not just top-heavy in that it will reduce the inflow of cash into the government while giving a tax break to the richest Americans, but it will actually put a tax burden on the poorest Americans and middle-class Americans. But again, those things aren't set in stone yet as far as the message that people are getting. And so we are in a world of theatrics, which is why I began this with saying this is ultimately they're either going to make a deal or not. The story is going to be, did they make a deal or not? And what does that mean? Here we're in the part about who's going to look best if no deal is made.
This is the only thing politicians have to do anymore. The only thing you have to do is fund the government.
Oh, right, fund the government.
That's it. Like, can we identify one more thing that you absolutely have to do? Because everything else can be a punt down the road. Now we're getting into with the tax bill, this weird feeling that we need to do something, don't we? But they don't really have to pass this tax bill. There's people who are holding out. But the only thing you have to do is pass the continuing resolution to fund the government. And it always gets this dramatic, this close to it. And it's super frustrating. And even if you feel like you're winning certain points along the way in this discussion, we're like, some people think this is exactly the tax bill discussion, and it's really difficult to later on down the line figure out what the hell this meeting was.
You know, and to take this into why the details of the tax bill, that's what matters, not this stuff, right? The detail, it doesn't matter that Donald Trump's a racist, or at a bare minimum, a race baiter. Right, that's any reasonable person has to, at a minimum, accept that he panders to racists. And so when he calls Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas in front of literally the people who
her dad, he thinks that's her dad.
Right,
he thinks that's Pocahontas' father.
In front of people whose sacrifice we should all be amazed by and ashamed that we asked them to make that sacrifice. Right. Of the members of the Navajo Nation, who had every right to say, we're not going to fight in your war. You have any idea what you've done to us, right? We're not in many states allowed to vote. But I'm falling into it too. That's exciting to talk about. What matters is that Elizabeth Warren, and her intellectual brainchild, the Consumer Protection Board, right? Consumer Financial Protection Board, that matters. That might be the strongest piece of legislation, strongest act that we have come up with that followed the financial crisis. That might mean more to regular Americans than Dodd-Frank, right? Which was, depending on who you asked, on the left, significantly watered down, or crazy people on the right, too tough, right? Nobody reasonable thinks it was too tough. But the Consumer Financial Protection Board, that matters. And instead of having a legitimate big debate about that board, about the Consumer Financial Protection Board, we get into a debate that Donald Trump is comfortable having. Am I racist?
Yeah.
He's comfortable with that. So, and we lose out talking about the meaty stuff, as always. All right, we have completed our first story. I'm gonna give us a B+.
Speak for yourself.
We'll be back. Well, I'm giving myself a C. You guys raised the grade.
Aww.
We'll be right back.
So sweet.
Paul Ryan part of this little scheme? So the seat in the middle, that's what you're talking about. That was where Leader Pelosi was supposed to.
But they all have their go-to body postures, and Trump, the whole arms crossed thing is either a defensive closed off, or some say that it's assertive. But that's when you're standing.
I think it doesn't seem that way to me. Or like you're trying to keep you're trying to sort of mask the pain of your perforated ulcer.
And I like the terrified child of the corn thumbs that are probably doing a SOS type Morse code warning to people set me free, set me free.
So as Ambry was saying, it's so theatrical with the fact that Schumer and Pelosi aren't there. But I wish they'd sell it a little more, And I guess we'll begin with well, you know what? Let's be fair. Let's open with the Democrat Speaker.
Yeah, do it right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If
where is she? It was supposed to start at 3:30.
And for Chuck Schumer,
we
have an inflatable sex doll. What do you think, inflatable sex doll, Chuck Schumer? Oh, sorry, you can't say anything. You seem to be an inflatable sex doll.
It's not Donald Trump, but it's a good something. Still good. Still
we gotta
good.
figure out what it is.
I don't know why I did that voice.
All right, so turning to the GOP tax bill, which they're looking for a vote Thursday or Friday, end of this week on the GOP tax bill. One of the senators who may be against it, it's hard to tell. It's hard to pin him down, is Republican Senator Bob Corker. Bob Corker, of course, now a outspoken critic of the Trump administration. He is not running for re-election in Tennessee. And he is the architect, not the sole architect, of a new bill, excuse me, of a new bill that would, what is the word they're using? Be a stopgap?
It's a backstop. They're trying to do the backstop thing.
Would be a backstop if the current tax bill does not meet the exaggerated magical growth that they say it will. So it's funny, but again, it's more theatrics. It's an acknowledgement to me from Bob Corker, although he won't just say it. Hey man, it's not going to, right? Because you've made it clear to us that while you're wrong on every issue, you're not a moron, right? And so he knows. And so now he has come up with this plan. He says with this backstop, that way you're in a situation where you're not creating deficits should the projections laid out not turn out to be real. Now we'll take that first graphic 4 here for more of Bob Corker. The change, no, this is from Alice Olstein from Talking Points memo. The change that they're seeking would create a backstop or trigger mechanism to undo some of the deepest tax cuts in the bill after several years if that magic economic growth doesn't materialize. But again, a reminder there that it's several years down the road that they would still let this play out before this would kick in.
And they haven't said what day, what year, how much. Is it 0.4% growth, every year after year, year over year compounded? Or is it well, in 10 years, if we reach the expiration date of some of these tax cuts and it doesn't work, well, then we'll let the tax cuts expire.
Well,
right, or they'll raise taxes, right? Which.
Yeah, so there's a lot you can put in there depending on how you think the government's gonna go. If you're gonna put in there and be like, all right, it's gonna take us at least 12 years to rebuild the Republican Party, or 5-6 years, we're gonna put it on the Democrats if they do end up winning the House. We'll put triggers in there so that suddenly it's on them and they're going to have to raise taxes to give us a reason and something to rally around in any midterm election that could happen along the way.
Yeah, so then they should, again, and so then when that time comes, just raise taxes. Say it, mean it, explain why. Here's what Corker says. This is graphic 5. We've been working throughout the entire Thanksgiving break. I'm certain that's not true. Working closely with the administration and some members of the Finance Committee to design a trigger or a backstop in the event the revenues are not there. There's a way to recoup them, as we were saying. So then we go back to Talking Points memo and Alice Olstein, who says Corker wouldn't say, as Brett was getting at, Corker wouldn't say exactly what tax cuts the trigger would undo or when it would kick in. Both of those seem like significant parts of, I don't know, a piece of congressional legislation that maybe you'd want to get to, though he did suggest there could be multiple triggers in the 10 years after the bill becomes law. So a decade from now, When the magical growth hasn't occurred in any of the 10 years, there might be something there. Let's get the final little bit here from Alice Olstein. Reports by independent groups, including the Tax Policy Center, have found that even with the predicted economic growth, the tax bill would still balloon the deficit by more than $1.2 trillion, enough to trigger deep automatic cuts to Medicare and other federal programs if Congress doesn't vote to waive its own budget rules. Again, a reminder to the Republicans, this is a win-win. Either they get the magical growth and they're heroes, they cut taxes. It's never done that. It won't do it here, right? Or that happens. And then it triggers automatic cuts to Medicare and other federal programs that they're very comfortable cutting and always want to cut, but are most of them uncomfortable, except for a few members of the Tea Party coming out and saying, no, we'd like to cut this. We don't want this. We either want to privatize, we don't want any part of it. We don't think this is the federal government's job. This is always what they want. This is why this whole debate is so dishonest.
Yeah, and they also get to paint the Democrats as people who are really hoping the economy doesn't grow. You know, you guys are really hoping so we can repeal these taxes, so we can raise taxes on people, and you guys are just chomping at the bit that the economy doesn't grow. Another way to characterize these backstops also is it's a timer. It's a timer on trickle-down economics, and I hate to break it to these guys, but that timer's been running since the 80s. And when is enough enough? Like that I feel like a broken record on, but that's what they're getting at.
Yeah, they Again, I'm struck by the dishonesty and ultimately because the Republicans have figured out how to play the media in the difficulty that the mainstream press always has in calling lies and calling deceit or calling what we know. This is what they want. They're not interested if those government programs fail. They want deep cuts in Medicare. For a while they made it clear, but that backfired. So Brett, I agree that they'd like to paint the Democrats as anti-growth, but mostly what they want to paint the Democrats as not interested in the things that not you, but the voters that they're talking to are interested in. That these are a lot of people who want to live off the government teat. These are minorities, these are poor people, these are people who are draining us, who are dragging us down slowly. And that ultimately, you're either going to stand with them, that's who the Democrats want, they just want to arm, well, actually the Republicans would like the arming, but they want to let illegals flood into the country, and then that's why I think that's in this tweet too. They want to let illegals flood into this country and drain our system. And that's who Democratic voters are, and that's who their constituents are.
I think the growth number is too general a number because the Republicans, when they pitch this new economic plan, they're saying that certain things will happen to trigger growth. Why don't we make the triggers, the backstop dependent on those things they say will happen? Like they say the corporate tax rate is too high in America. Let's lower the corporate tax rate, which will bring in all this money that's being offshored. Why don't we put a repatriation mandate trigger? Why don't we mandate that these companies come back? And if that's their logic, if that doesn't happen over a certain time, why is that not the trigger? As opposed to this idea of GDP growth or whatever they're looking at, which can be dependent on so many different factors. One of the main arguments against this is that you're trying to lower the corporate tax rate, and that will cause since companies have so much more money that they'll pour it back into the economy. But if you look at those giant corporations, small businesses, I've seen a small business is more likely to take a penny saved and move it into and invest it back in the company.
Every dollar the Young Turks have made, they put it back in.
Put it right back
in. Right.
Yeah, which is why I am terrified for its financial solvency every single day.
So there's a couple of other things. Senator John Kennedy, there should be a rule. You can't have a senator named John Kennedy.
Yeah, that's true. Senator John Kennedy.
It's like number 40, Jackie Robinson's number 42. It's been retired across Major League Baseball. John Kennedy, been retired in the Senate. You have a middle name, probably.
He's got to.
Let's say his middle name is
Bobby.
Kyle.
Bobby would be. Just can't.
Yeah, go ahead.
So he says it will pay for itself. I would not vote for this bill if I thought it was going to increase the deficit. So again, that gets to right. What do we think that is, Amber? Is that is that deceit or ignorance?
We don't believe you, and I think that's what a lot of these Republican senators have said. Like, well, if I didn't believe in this, I wouldn't do it. give us a CBO score.
Yeah,
let's
right,
go through some hearings. Let's let the professionals tell us what this bill is about. And you're rushing it, and we don't care that you're working through Thanksgiving. You wouldn't have to if you weren't trying to rush this bill, this crappy bill, to get it to pass. So I don't care about your personal feelings. I'd like some evidence to prove that this bill really is as bad as we know it is.
Another thing along to that point, both James Lankford, a Republican of Oklahoma, and Jerry Moran, Republican of Kansas, they've both brought up the fiscal disaster in Kansas, led by Governor Sam Brown back there, that resulted from a slew of massive tax cuts. And then, and it's weird that what happened in Kansas was they cut taxes by all this money, and then the government of Kansas, it didn't have any money. Right? And yeah, no one could have seen that.
In a similar move, I stopped putting gas in my car.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden I was trying to get somewhere, it wouldn't go. It would not go. So they both say that the result from a slew of massive tax cuts is a cautionary tale that should not be repeated on the federal level. Well then, dudes, then don't repeat it.
Yeah.
Then don't repeat it.
That's exactly what this is. It will pay for itself. You're not and those aren't backed up by any numbers.
And the same people who were concerned about the threat of the debt crisis all of a sudden don't care about it. So
that Consumer Financial Protection Bureau thing drives me crazy.
Well, we're going to touch now on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but in the context of the story that triggered the latest conversation about it. So Donald Trump yesterday appeared was at an event to honor Navajo war veterans. These are the code talkers who who were fluent in Navajo and fluent in English, and then invented an entirely new language to be able to send codes to say things. There was an obit, a Charles Pierce Gray piece in Esquire, quoting from an obit from a couple years ago of a Navajo code talker who died at 93 in 2015. And the codes, so just so you're clear about what these codes were, his code was Japanese enemy machine gun to your right. Take it out, destroy, right? And so you know what they did? They heard that, the Japanese couldn't break that code, and then they took it out and destroyed it and won a battle. Like that's what these guys did. That's what they did. This guy, the New York Times obit that Charles Pierce was quoting from, was not allowed to vote. When he went to get his identity card that Native Americans in New Mexico were required to carry with them, they had to have identification with them and show identification, told him that he was not a full American citizen. Again, couldn't vote for years. And even though, as he thought to sign up for the Marines, when a recruiter came, he thought, why am I, why would I do this after the way the government has treated my people? And they thought, no, you know what, this might be the last meaningful chance I have to serve my country. So he did. So Donald Trump takes that opportunity to make his Pocahontas joke at an event to honor the Navajo war veterans at the White House. The reaction was pretty much universal. They were dumbfounded that Trump would use this event to take a political jab at Elizabeth Warren. The reason that he's taking these political jabs at Elizabeth Warren is because I think very clearly the White House sees Elizabeth Warren as a threat. And they want to undo her significant contribution to rebounding from the financial crisis, the Consumer Financial Protection Board. That's hers. It's worked. Many people consider it the strongest federal action taken after the financial crisis, as I mentioned before, stronger than Dodd-Frank. And they want to kill her significant piece of legislation. The battle very quickly that has been set up there is the director resigned and he named a career employee there to take over. And Donald Trump, because there was a vacancy at a federal agency or a federal staffing position, named Mick Mulvaney, his budget director. The guy, first of all, the guy has a job, right? So his job would be do nothing, protect nothing. That's what they'll do. So that's in court right now of which guy is going to lead that. So, but anyway, the reaction to that was, I believe, Trump's motivation for making the Pocahontas joke at Elizabeth Warren's. By the way, the joke that has no resonance whatsoever. So here was the reaction around town to that. First of all, from Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Let's take graphic 8 here. White House spokeswoman Sarah Huckabee Sanders, asked about criticism of Trump's remarks, said a racial slur was certainly not the president's intent. She said, going on here, I think what most people find offensive is Senator Warren lying about her heritage to advance her career. That's not what's happened. That's what that story has been debunked 1,000 times. Meghan McCain, for example, who should really not be carrying the administration's water on anything. She went on The View this morning and said that Senator Warren used her Native American heritage, which she'd been told about all her life, that she used it to get into Harvard Law School. She taught at Harvard Law School. Do you know where Senator Warren went to law school?
Where did she go to law school?
She went to Rutgers, the Newark campus.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So, and I'm not trying to make fun of the Rutgers. Well, I am a little. The Rutgers Newark campus. No, but I'm saying
she's not trying to make fun of Newark, New Jersey, but it sucks there.
Right, but she was going to get in there, and she didn't, by the way, use it there. It was merely listed in her Harvard professorial bio. That's it. She's already at Harvard, right? Success. Can't really succeed anymore. That's it. But of course, Meghan McCain got the information wrong, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders suggesting that what most people find offensive is Warren lying about her heritage. No, what most people find offensive is the president calling Senator Warren Pocahontas, period, and then augmented by the fact that he did it in front of these Navajo Nation war veterans. To continue the story a little bit, ABC got involved in the person of Jonathan Karl, ABC News White House correspondent. He said, why did he, meaning the president, feel the need to say something that is offensive to many people while honoring the Navajo code talkers, these genuine American heroes? A couple of things. Put that back up for 1 second. I got it. I know these guys are out there, and we've seen some great journalism, but it should be offensive to everyone. And it doesn't matter whether it's offensive. What matters is that it's hideous and it's inappropriate and it's unpresidential and it's cruel and it's petty. And of course, by referring to Elizabeth Warren as Pocahontas, of course that's going to be offensive to these guys. Not that, even the way Jonathan Karl, and I don't mean to single him out, I really don't, but even that has a way of making it seem like, boy, those Navajo code talkers, those guys sure are touchy. Like, get over it, fellas.
Right. I feel with stories like that, when people say and write those, you are caught in a very difficult position between the president tearing down every line of formality that's ever been set forth, and then your respect for the kind of way that a journalist who is an ABC News correspondent writes. And it's just, this is how I write it.
I agree. I don't mean to call Jonathan Karl. They're in an impossible situation, but it has the effect of, to me, I read that and I'm like, oh, these, like, toughen up, Navajo code talkers, when literally the history has proven they're the toughest Americans.
It's just such a transparent, was like, there's an Indian, she said an Indian thing, I'm gonna do the Indian thing.
And then do this, reach out, put my hand on, like, but I love you, guy.
Am I right? Prop?
Yeah.
It's a window into his mind, and again, his inability to understand the gravity or seriousness of any moment ever. And I think, to your point about the statement, it's just stupid, right? So we don't even have to go down the line of the racial slur argument to talk about the inappropriateness of even mentioning it, of even using the moment to insult another senator, right? I think it's just ridiculous, because then we get into the issue with Sarah Huckabee Sanders saying, well, no, it's not a racial slur, right? We had that argument. We have the argument about what other people find offensive, and now it's a debate about what people find offensive.
Right, that's right. That's really what I use. Everybody says things better than I do. Thank you, Aaron. So now we get a response to Jonathan Karl's tweet from Eric Trump, who is the other son. The irony, says Eric Trump in a tweet, of an ABC reporter, parentheses, whose parent company Disney has profited nearly $500 million on the movie Pocahontas. Nailed it. Inferring that the name is quote unquote offensive is truly staggering to me. I saw a tweet today, I can't remember who it was from, and I'm sorry not to give them credit, that it's becoming really hard to tell who the dumbest Trump son is. That the competition between Eric and Donald Jr. is really, really intense. And I think it's gonna go down to the wire.
I think Pocahontas is a bad movie. I tried to rewatch Pocahontas, and like Disney should kind of be ashamed. It was a very like Dances with Wolves era. Native Americans are magic people, and Grandmother Willow can like magically touch you, and now you like speak the same language. It is a paint with all the colors of the wind. It's very touchy-feely, weird mid-90s feel-goodery. But
Okay, just bear in mind, I neither agree nor disagree, but it's a reasonable point. But it is from an industry that, for the first 40 years that it was in serious business, in a big profitable money-making business, portrayed just 97% of every Native American as a dangerous warrior looking to slit your throat. So yeah, maybe there's a little too much simplification and
but like
overcompensation.
I feel like they've come a long way.
Yes,
that's the thing, is that they are not caught in the same place. There is a video circulating right now of Donald Trump asking why that certain people are given licenses by the government to have Native American gaming casinos, and his quote is, "They don't look like Indians to me."
Right, yeah.
They don't look like Indians to me.
There's video.
And then video of that. And then there's video of this where he's like, you have a feather, they have a feather, we're Native Indians. He hasn't gone anywhere.
That's right. He's stuck in 1940 movies.
And then
And this tweet doesn't make any sense. Like, it's non sequitur. Like, why are we talking about the movie Pocahontas? Because Pocahontas is a real person. Like, why are we talking about the movie Pocahontas? And Pocahontas can be a shitty movie, and this can be a shitty statement. Like, both things can be true. Yeah. It's still inappropriate.
Yeah, you know who was called Pocahontas in the movie Pocahontas? Pocahontas.
Yeah. You know what I'll get him with, though? The parent company joke.
Yeah.
The corporate structure joke will really get him.
And coming from you, it's like,
I tweeted back at him like, it's all about usage. Like, you can use the word Pocahontas as like the name of a person and as a slur, and like the usage and content is what matters. Like, I could say love trumps hate, and that's not a slur, but I could say you're acting like a real Trump, and that is a slur.
Very nice, that's right. Yeah, so I feel like that, which one's his wife?
His wife is, I think, Barbie? Barbie or
all right.
Which one?
Sorry, I asked.
Kid's sister. Skipper, which one? Is it Barbie or Skipper? I don't remember.
But
that was mean, and I feel bad about it instantly. That was wrong.
Was there a black version of Skipper?
Yeah, there was.
Okay,
I think it was Skipper.
Just had to make sure.
But I feel like Eric Trump thinks he learned the definition of irony and wanted to use it in a tweet.
Right.
Right. And then it's going to be like that Anchorman moment where Will Ferrell doesn't quite get, where the when in Rome. When they're in bed together, he goes, "Well, when in Rome," and she's like, why am I blanking?
Christina Applegate.
Christina Applegate says, "No, you still don't quite have it."
Yeah. I also want to say that he came up with this idea to use the ironic while just blasting Alanis Morissette in the shower, like in his green marble shower, like, it's like rain, and it's an ironic. You know what else is ironic?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get him. Brings his phone into the shower, it short circuits, opens a drawer full of like 100 other phones.
100 other new phones.
This happens every day, I gotta stop. All right.
I hate that these gaffes always happen in front of people of color too, right? So even if he's not racist, right? The fact that he continues to do these things and can't comport himself in a way that is just regular shows that he's uncomfortable around people, right? Like if you're uncomfortable around people of color, you can't do regular kinds of interactions. Right. That kind of shows you might be racist, right? Like you might have racial biases that prevent you from being normal, right? And that's problematic.
He might also have, I have Indian friends. Like, this is my Indian friend here. I'm with them. We're giving them an award. So I'm obviously not,
Yeah, even the word special. You're special to me. It's like, this isn't like
just talk normal.
Like, use a vocabulary word that's better than like special. I'm a warrior. Like I'm a hero. Like, use another word.
These Native American warriors made the ultimate sacrifice. They could have stayed home with bone spurs if they wanted. Like so many. Who did that?
All right, we'll be back here on the Young Turks. North Korea has apparently fired a ballistic missile, indicating that maybe Trump didn't have that magic Kavorka touch to get them to stop. Go figure, Young Turks.
I'm gonna tell you a story, and then I want you to tell me what you think about the way I reacted to the situation and if you thought it was acceptable.
Guilty. Oh wait, I gotta wait for the story.
I know Anna Kasparian has some stuff to say, and the world needs to hear it.
But then he became woke bang. I hate it.
I love it.
Jesus and I used to do this trick where we would elongate the videos so that we would look skinnier.
That is the most positive drug dealing story I've ever heard of.
Bears don't give a fuck. I trust you guys, audience. Don't let me down.
You don't believe in ghosts? Talking about pussy. Oh, don't.
The food in Turkey is phenomenal.
Hey, we got spotted TYT. What is this? What's a spam?
Oh, death.
Did you want to poop outside? No, I poop here. It's fine because I bury it.
And you know what happens in that water? Turns the frogs gay.
And they can't stand the establishment. And then I slipped and fell on my ass.
Guess I gotta get comfortable here.
That is tomorrow's joke. Jake, when your time is up, what wouldn't you do for just one more day?
I'm gonna try to have sex with you. If you don't want it right now, just roll up a newspaper and hit me.
Hottest club I've ever been to is my bedroom. People often say that you are the Jasmine of TYT.
Yep.
Please, I am not with you, baby. You gotta let me go.
Oh God, this hurts so bad.
You're alive, you're alive. The last day is not any more valuable than today is.
Robbie Canal, he calls his work urban beautification.
I didn't go out to be a street artist or to make posters. I was just compelled to do it. I was mad enough it didn't matter. It was like a form of minor civil disobedience even, you know, like, fuck you. How about your higher crime? Power operates to self-replicate itself, to maintain the status quo so it stays in power. When you go to do something like this, to express yourself in public about an issue you care about, make sure you pick a bigger weapon, and the weapon is knowledge. The one thing about street art, it's not like I put up my posters to change anybody's mind about anything. The difference between propaganda and the kind of art I do is propaganda is telling people what to think. The way the art works, where the art works, is between the time you see it and the time you figure it out for yourself. I'm an optimist. I might have made a lot of ugly paintings about a lot of ugly people, but it's out of love, not for them.
Hey, Jen, what's up?
Aaron, did they change the icon for Vine? I can't find it.
Unfortunate music to come back with bad breaking news, or really breaking bad news.
Nice. I rewatched that show recently. It's still good.
Still good, yeah. Do you watch Better Call Saul?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I think, do we not do the reviews together? I don't remember.
I don't remember which ones you were on.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of people, Brett.
Oh, I know.
That's the whole tone of that was.
I sit at home painting images of you for my memory.
I mean, a lot of white guys come through my life. Hearing Tuesday night, that's when we tape this show, U.S. District Court Judge Tim Kelly ruled that he will not issue an emergency order blocking the appointment of Mick Mulvaney to run the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This was the fight after Richard Cordray left to run for governor of Ohio.
I think that's what I read.
And named a successor, which under Dodd-Frank was the proper mechanism. Trump has, in an effort to crush the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the only silver lining from Trump's desire to crush the bureau, other than obviously it protects consumers, so he's not into it because there's an opportunity for banks to make a little bit more money. And is that Mick Mulvaney so he'll undermine that. What's it like, Brett?
It's like putting Cruella de Vil in charge of PETA.
That's right. Thank you, Brett Ehrlich, ladies and gentlemen.
If you want those, or the Dalmatian lobby.
You went past the punchline, man.
That's right.
You went past the punchline.
Sorry.
I don't think we should
National Kennel Club.
I don't want to see that taken out in editing either because I want to teach you a lesson. But Mick Mulvaney will completely undermine everything the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau does. I mean, everyone should, again, understand that he's there to destroy that agency. The only silver lining is that it's important to the administration to undermine Elizabeth Warren, an indication that Elizabeth Warren has some power and that she is very much on their radar. I heard earlier today, before Judge Kelly issued that order or refused to issue that order, that either way, this decision was going to be appealed. So in the meantime, though, I imagine that there's not an order and Mick Mulvaney he'll be there first thing in the morning Wednesday.
I've never wanted to work someplace more than I want to work at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau right now, having two bosses.
Oh, right, yeah.
Believe in utterly different approaches to the company.
Right.
Like, they were like, Mulvaney brought donuts is literally what happened. He gave everybody donuts. And then English was like, oh, thank you all for working with me. And it's just awkward.
Yeah,
it's awful.
Mulvaney's like, hey, congratulations to Employee of the Month, Ambria Allen. You get the great parking space. And then the woman that Cordray named was like, oh, great, and congratulations to our Employee of the Month, Brett Ehrlich. And then both you guys are like running to your cars trying to get there first.
It's like The Office when Michael and Jim, right?
Yes.
Jim was day to day and Michael was big picture. And it was like,
it always works. That's why we have two presidents, I believe it's the line.
So more news today out of North Korea. North Korea fired a ballistic missile today, Wednesday morning. That's what time it is in Korea. It's actually Wednesday of next week, too. They don't tell you that.
It's actually,
it was the first time they fired a missile in better than 2 months. Oddly enough, defying demands from President Trump that they halt their weapons program. And it obviously significantly raises the stakes in the what could become, in worst case scenario, a nuclear-fueled battle on the Korean Peninsula. This is the news today, which means that this, from when President Trump addressed the United Nations, was it last month?
I think so. It was a while. I don't remember. They all blur together.
Earlier, when President Trump before addressed the United Nations. This is video 6.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary.
So here are the details on what happened today from the New York Times. Graphic 19, North Korea fired an intercontinental ballistic missile early Wednesday for the first time in 4 months. The missile took off around Pyongyang at 3:17 in the morning, flew east for about 53 minutes, before landing off the north of Honshu. That's Japan's largest island, nearly 600 miles from the launch site. So again, the indications would be that, as you might imagine, that North Korea just sort of plows ahead and does what it wants, regardless of what any U.S. administration has said. The Trump people will try to blame this on Obama and the Obama administration and the foreign policy team there, that they left this mess, but The reality is that things have gone best for North Korea when we have engaged with them most. We are engaging now with them least. But this is a problem that has existed for American presidents since the end of the Korean police action.
Right. It is. Yeah. This the way the time works is it was 3 o'clock in the morning in 1958
Right.
is when they shot. Except they have nukes now.
Right. That's right.
That's the difference. Yeah, it's weird because they took 2 months off between the era when the era 2 months ago when they were essentially shooting off a rocket every few weeks, or if not more often, and folks are wondering why the hell is that happening.
Well, let's take a look real quick at graphic 21 here. North Korea has now test-fired 15 missiles so far in 2017, conducted its 6th underground nuclear test in September. So this has been a particularly busy year for North Korea testing weapons.
They took time off. What was the reason for that? Some could, there's one approach that could say, well, they weren't ready with this missile yet. It was delayed, and so they couldn't launch something that wasn't ready. Maybe there was some kind of problem they had technologically, or in the meantime, things that have happened are President Trump went to Asia to try to rally support. There was an envoy sent from China to North Korea. Maybe they wanted to see just exactly how hot China wanted to exert pressure or not, or what kinds of things they wanted to say in their meeting in between then. And then also there was the raising, the levying of sanctions from the UN Security Council and increased sanctions and putting North Korea back on the list of state sponsors of terror, and maybe they had some kind of administrative issues that they needed to see to kind of handle the repercussions of that change in policy.
North Korea, all that is entirely possible. So is North Korea was waiting for the return of Dennis Rodman, who was posing, of course, as a nuclear scientist and breaking into Los Alamos to get the final details that Kim Jong-un needs.
Teach us how to rebound from this crisis.
What strikes me as most likely is that Pyongyang, which I know how to pronounce well because I watched MASH.
Good for you.
Is that they're operating on their own timetable, and it really doesn't matter what happens around them. I mean, if there is a compelling reason to scale back, if they're engaged, then maybe they will. We haven't seen that before, and I'm not suggesting that a different administration would have North Korea engaged in a more meaningful way. But they're headed for their 70th anniversary, and I think that they want to say on their 70th anniversary, our nuclear program is complete.
Yeah,
we have it. We're ready. We're 70, and we're betting 70 is the new 50, and we're ready to bomb.
And they're going to do it in the kind of like commercial propaganda that mimics like a Cialis commercial. Like, you're getting up there in age, make sure your heart is healthy enough for nuclear activity.
Both of you.
But like, that's the kind of weird we're gonna see a weird propaganda video that will kind of offset how terrifying it is that they're doing this.
You think Kim Jong-un's gonna have a weird propaganda video?
That's what I can't wait for.
It'll be very mainstream.
Yeah.
International crisis, guys.
But of course they're trying. Of course they're trying to establish some kind of nuclear program. They want to have it done. Things that have happened that you can point to Trump for doing is, saying that the nuclear deal is bad, and it's not just him. This has happened. No one solved the North Korea problem. If you say that one side was better at it, like the person who took North Korea, as far as I remember, off the list of state sponsors of terror was George W. Bush. Like that happened, and no one has solved it. Trump has undercut. You want to send a message that like, if you back off your nuclear program, things are going to go a lot better for you. But if you look at what's happened in Iran, they agreed to a nuclear deal, and Trump has done nothing but try to undercut that. Libya, give up your nuclear weapons program. All right, we're going to eventually someone's going to drag Gaddafi through a ditch. Like, that promise hasn't been delivered on, and it's a lot of people's faults or decisions or what have you. But it seems like if you're North Korea and your priority is to stay in power, you don't see a clear path towards staying in power that involves giving up your nuclear arsenal and plans.
North Korea has persisted in its nuclear, reading from the New York Times, North Korea has persisted in its nuclear weapons and missile development despite 9 rounds of sanctions that the Security Council has imposed. That since 2006, since its first test. Country has also made strides in its ballistic missile program since Kim Jong-un took power in late 2011, tested 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles in July, the last of which demonstrated the potential of reaching the mainland of the United States. Now Washington is applying what it calls, quote, maximum pressure and sanctions to stop North Korea from reaching the stage where it would be able to deliver a nuclear warhead on its ICBMs. But Kim Jong-un says his country will conduct more missile tests in the Pacific Ocean to hone its capabilities. And again, I would imagine, I read this and it just made sense. It's not like I came up with it on my own, that they want to be ready by the time they turn 70. And that's what they're going for. And it's not about like which administration we get to blame. There was a time in this country that sort of issues like this, really there was no significant partisan divide on, because there were, at the bare minimum in the State Department, hundreds, thousands of competent professionals who worked on issues like this. That is not the case anymore.
Sure.
One of the things that I think that it's worth all of us as Americans to focus on is that while Rex Tillerson is not Mike Flynn, he's not David Clark, he's not Sarah Huckabee Sanders, he's not Mike Huckabee, he's not any of the Trump kids, right? He's not Steve Bannon or Roger Stone. He is not a raving lunatic, right? Who should have no Alex Jones, who should have no Sean Hannity, who should not have no influence whatsoever in the government. He will go down as the worst Secretary of State in American history, modern American history, because we had some with some other issues. He has no business at this job. He's not interested in this job. The mere fact that we want to like him now because he hates Trump and Trump hates him is a point in his favor, but it is literally the only point in his favor.
Sure.
And the notion that this administration selected as the guy to lead the State Department in these incredibly troubling times, which they kept talking about, these troubling times that the Obama administration left us in, that they would hire an oil executive to head the Department of State is an outrage that we have let slip off the table of outrages, because I got it, we've had 1,000 more. But he has no business in the job. The stories are that he does not want the job, right. And we are seeing professionals leave the State Department in droves. And there is going to be an impact for that, in that eventually we will run out, we may have already reached that point, of the North Korea experts. Partially, I don't blame them for leaving, because they're like, hey, nobody's listening to me. Like, I've been working on North Korea. I knew his father. I knew his grandfather. I've been working. My life is understanding what North Korea has done. We know they're not being invited to the table. And we know that a couple weeks ago, Rex Tillerson devoted tons of State Department resources to finding Hillary Clinton emails.
Right.
So, for the love of God, stop touting Rex Tillerson as an answer to anything. He isn't. And it is as bad a move as Trump has made in the fractious, dangerous world that we live in, that he appointed an oil executive from Exxon to run the Department of State.
Yeah, his core competency in a situation like this would be finding a way to go somewhere between the State Department and North Korea, if he was still running Exxon, to find a way to get the oil rights in the demilitarized zone. Like, that's his core competency. It's a way to find how to exploit resources given constraints. When it comes to dealing with this on behalf of anything more than his business interests, I don't blame the guy, but that's not what he's good at.
Yeah, it's not. This is not. What counts as winning for ExxonMobil is not the same as winning for us. We may have to pay an enormous price, financially, right? Or losing face. Also, but if the result of it is some degree of stability in the Korean Peninsula and protecting the millions of South Koreans who we have taken on, and appropriately so, as our duty to protect, then that's what a diplomat does. He never was a diplomat. He never showed any interest in it. It's not really his fault, except it is his fault for taking
the job. Right. Yeah.
All right, that's your North Korea update. Do we take a break now, or do we just keep chugging along?
Do you want to chug along? I got a piece of paper.
Let's just chug.
Let's chug, who cares? All right, I'm gonna introduce this story now. You guys are screwed.
Thank God.
You done? How did that feel?
Great.
You did great work. He's fantastic. And now for something completely different. Okay, dozens.
Today.
It's It's Friday, right? Okay. Dozens of police departments are seeking expanded powers to check people's immigration status. This is very important. There's a program called 287G that essentially allows local police departments to get their police officers deputized to perform certain functions that typically are in charge, or what ICE is in charge of, the customs and immigration. And so they have offered this program to certain police departments. 29 have signed up, 38 more are interested in signing up. What kind of people are signing up? So according to Reuters analysis, the police departments that joined or expressed interest in joining oversee small populations, typically fewer than 100,000 residents with small immigrant populations. Police departments in places like New York and Los Angeles, which have larger populations, have thus far limited federal cooperation and promised to defy Trump's executive orders to increase the number of detentions and deportations of immigrant populations. So essentially, you sign up for this program, you get deputized to kind of essentially promise to check the background of any person that you suspect of being an undocumented immigrant. But there's another incentive built into this program that would kind of incentivize these local police departments to sign up for it. The town stands to make money if it signs a separate contract with ICE to house immigrant detainees, a payment that comes per detainee per day. As of April 27, about 1/3 of the 98 jurisdictions that have existing agreements or have expressed interest in them house people on behalf of ICE, according to Reuters. So what do you guys have a problem with that? This is essentially the
of course, of course. Any sane person. First of all,
it was a good conversation starter, question wise.
It was solid. It was totally solid.
Wise.
I say this every time a story comes up with ICE. You can't have a law enforcement agency designed solely to have a cool name. I guarantee you they worked backwards from ICE.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. Like, we want to be called ICE. How do we make that fit? Like, what could that be, right? Immigration, customs enforcement, yes. Again, because you feel like a badass. You're not supposed to feel like a badass. You're supposed to feel like you're in law enforcement, right? And then you're supposed to enforce the law. So I don't like a cool name for law enforcement. I don't think it's. I don't think they're. I think.
What about SWAT team though?
SWAT only became cool in retrospect. Like when they came up with SWAT, it didn't sound cool until the show started.
Bull S.
Huh?
Bull S.
Oh, you think so?
I think so. You came up with SWAT because you wanted it to be like the SWAT team.
Yeah, I got you.
I don't know.
It's not as badass instinctively as ICE. Okay, but let's leave that part out. So you're now going to financially incentivize law enforcement to detain people. It's pretty easy for any crime. Pretty easy to see why you'd pull over a dark-looking person for jaywalking, for slow rolling through a stop sign when nobody else was around. The kind of stuff that happens every day. The cops look the other way on every day. But here's an opportunity. Oh, look, I'll run them in. I now have this enhanced federal power to check their immigration status and detain them and then deport them or start a deportation process. And I'm going to get financially rewarded for that. That's criminal. That's horrible. I also hope that there is that many on the right are suitably outraged at this overreach of federal authority given to the states. I'm sure they're not. But if they're true to what they believe in, then they would be.
Yeah. This has been shut down already in certain jurisdictions. To give you an idea of what has happened as a result of giving people an incentive to check people's immigration background, they have shut these down largely on racial grounds. According to the US Department of Justice, they shut down the program in Arizona's Maricopa County. There's a familiar name.
Sheriff Joe.
Sheriff, yep, in 2011 after it found that the department engaged in discriminatory policing practices which abuse the rights of Latinos, essentially telling them like, listen, you guys, you have to sign this, so we have to send you back, as opposed to not signing it and allowing the process to go forward where it could be looked into that they might have a right to be released.
The guy's given one pardon, right? Trump?
Yeah, and it's I don't know if it's one, but the one that I've heard about is Joe. And then another one is the Department of Justice also terminated the program in Almonte County, I don't know if I'm saying that right, North Carolina, after finding the police department, quote, routinely discriminates against and targets Latinos. The Almonte County Sheriff's Office, where the sheriff once ordered his deputies to, quote, bring me some Mexicans, is once again seeking to rejoin the federal program as of November, according to the Weekly.
So they want back in. Boy, you know, if that quote just changes slightly, instead of bring me some Mexicans to bring me some Mexican food,
right?
Then, like, I'll go to Almonte County and I'll eat Mexican food with the sheriff. That sounds fantastic, right? But no, instead, what it is clear is that there's no getting around it. Anyone who says the phrase in a law enforcement position, bring me some Mexicans, that's racist. There's no, am I wrong? Is there a soft interpretation of that? Am I being too harsh?
Oh no, I don't think that's up for debate. I mean, I think mass incarceration is an industry, right? Like, this is obviously gonna bolster private prisons, which is something that Jeff Sessions wanted, like in the first couple months outright, kind of ending programs that were ending the expansion of private prisons. This is gonna bolster that. And I think you're gonna get racial profiling anytime it's happening. The enrollment is proliferating in these places where the demographic of immigrants is not high, right? So places like Los Angeles and New York, all of this stuff is getting shut down, but it's in these small spaces, or these cities, towns, where people are racist, right?
Well,
like,
it just also feels like they've been painting this picture of their town as this thing that's getting overrun by illegal immigrants. Illegal statistics would say no. I mean, rural areas and undocumented immigrants, like I mean, I guess maybe, but
I'm sure there are places in the country where it's a problem. But overall, the percentage of time that we spend talking about this issue, it is massively overshadows the actual level of problem that this is. I am sure, I don't mean to minimize, there are towns where people actually have lost jobs to undocumented immigrants. I'm sure it's happened somewhere. It is not a crisis in the United States of America in any way. And it's obvious. What you think cops anywhere are gonna be like, Brett and I are crossing the street and we jaywalk and they're gonna be like, check, see if those fellows are from Quebec. Right, you know, we're gonna run them back to the Great White North. It's never gonna happen. We know how this is gonna go down. We know exactly how this is gonna go down, as evidenced by what already has happened in Maricopa County and Almonte County in North Carolina.
Yep. All right, we've got to take a break. Please hit us up on our Twitter feeds at #TYT Live, and we'll read some of those. Also, more to talk about after the break. Don't go away.
TYT is unique in a lot of ways.
I'm gonna ask some uncomfortable questions.
I feel like I missed
out.
So what is going on? If I don't eat, my head's gonna explode.
As I take my shirt off, just goes, is that your body?
Now we move to inappropriate story number 2.
I just never felt guilty about masturbation.
It's amazing, man.
I could take partial credit for opening up your sexuality.
I was the kid in the pool with the shirt off. Let's just call it what it is. I was that kid.
Well, you deal with the bitch side of it, right? But you're my boss, so that's what happens.
I think we're more likely to win. They do see it from a frame of the rich and the powerful, and they don't realize that.
The last time that happened, we elected Abraham Lincoln.
I don't know, wouldn't it be wonderful if we unfucked the world?
You and I are a disaster.
Don't stereotype all cops, don't stereotype all anything. Blowing up like Dave Kohler on Twitter, that's pretty good progress.
I didn't know you could leave positive comments.
It's a very TYT thing. I'll tell you a whole bunch of depressing stuff so that at the end I can give you hope. Winning is, in terms of change and positive change, is not just possible, it's inevitable.
Great time to be alive.
Let's burn this mother down, huh? Is that what you're saying? Fuck it, let's go do it. And that's why I keep thanking you guys for being members. Because together, we got their attention.
Thanks for tuning in, and as always, stay strong.
He's a war hero. 5.5 years. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
He said I had small hands. They're not small, are they? I never heard that one before.
It's John and Hannah on Think Tank.
Welcome back to Think Tank.
It's the anti-social media. Is that what that is?
Shit. Maybe they're in the studio watching it.
Do you like how I dance like Kermit from the Muppets? Like just no.
Love it.
Do you?
No, because this is flipping stupid.
That's going too far. He's going to have the conversation.
No. This is a great think tank. You guys love this video.
Have I told you to check out Think Tank today? YouTube.com/Think Tank.
Welcome back to the Young Turks, everybody. Nano Vila joining us in the studio.
Yes.
Ben Mankiewicz still here, but now who's driving this bus?
Yeah, now this bus is gonna make its stops on time. It's cruising along.
Yeah.
Not gonna stop where it's not supposed to.
It might stop. It might come to a screeching halt. It did, I think, when we came back, because I didn't ask who was bringing us back from that. I have some reads to give you, as they're called in the business. Anna Kasparian, where is she? I'm sure you're dying to know. She is participating in a politics and digital media roundtable tomorrow, Wednesday, November 29th, with Senator Bernie Sanders.
Wow,
that's very exciting. Yeah, and you can watch on Facebook Live on Senator Bernie Sanders' Facebook page at 4:45 p.m. Eastern Time or 1:45 p.m. Pacific Time.
And we know Dina Takruri from AJ Plus. We like her.
Yes, we do.
Do we? I don't know who that is.
Know what you're
no,
implying.
she was on she was on our air like during the convention, so I did like a couple of shows with her.
I used to work in the building where AJ Plus is now.
So you're basically best friends.
Wildly jealous, that's it. It was an awesome building. It's like in San Francisco by the water. Not to say anything about where we're currently located, but it's much, much worse. And then finally.
Also, real quick, I just mentioned about Bernie Sanders, interesting story from Politico, sort of this week, yesterday. Suggesting that Bernie Sanders, while the head of essentially outreach, that's the job that Chuck Schumer gave him. But what Sanders is doing is putting together a presidential team.
Yeah,
that's what he's doing, and he's also hired a couple of people. Much more, he's making peace with unions. He's very involved with Randy Weingarten from the teachers union, and he's hired these foreign policy guys to sort of shore up what was obviously a weak point in 2016. On foreign policy, but mostly just taking the tactic of connecting in many ways with some of the party establishment types that he kept very much at arm's length and kept him very much at arm's length in 2016. As polls indicate, he is the most popular non-Democrat among Democrats. But it's a suggestion that to me that like his lack of formally joining the party is merely tactical.
Yeah.
He has for all intents and purposes.
In the eyes of the voters.
It's a strength in the eyes of the voters, what he is, but he is for all intents and purposes a Democrat who is being able to say, hey man, I'm not a Democrat.
Right.
He's doing everything that a guy who is going to run for president in 2020 it would normally do.
There are people who didn't vote for the Democrat this time around who voted for a Democrat before because they do what they want to do, what's most in line with what they feel like doing. And I get that from Bernie Sanders. He's like, I believe the same thing throughout. And that's what's so refreshing is like, oh, I just ran what you asked me through what I believe and I am giving you the answer now.
Right.
All right, another similar to Bernie Sanders. Shop TYT 10 days of Black Friday sale. Tuesday, 11/28, Giving Tuesday. That's what we're calling it. 10% of all proceeds will be donated to the Committee to Protect Journalists.
I like that. I do like the FDR T-shirt.
Yeah.
I like
the CPJ is a great organization. They do.
Yeah.
They do a lot of great work.
I love. That's how I know you know about it. Is that you know that you can just call it the CPJ.
Joel Simon, you're my bud.
You're much closer to it than I, because I'm like I couldn't even read all those words together.
Yeah, they have a very fancy gala every year in New York. You should get invited sometime.
Really?
Yeah, that's when you know you've really made it.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never been to a gala. I don't think.
Ever in your life?
Never. All right, let's see what we've got here.
Been invited. What about a gala?
A gala?
I've had a gala apple. The same. I got invited to that by Whole Foods. All right, member shout outs today. Charles Collins and Susan Arnett, thank you so much. It's made possible by viewers like you, etc. And then, I don't know what else. Oh, live tweets. Tristan Rossella wrote, at this rate, in 20 years, the top 1% will have 100% of the money in America, but the US dollar will be worth nothing compared to the yuan and ruble.
Renminbi?
Renminbi and ruble. 100% of $0 is still $0. And the unstable Canadian writes, the return of Brett's sweater. You're damn right. I'm on both hours today, so I had to dress accordingly with the uniform that came back from, well, my car where I left it for however many months it's been since I've worn it. Let's get into this story, for time is a-wasting. All right, Republicans don't think that they have a sexual harassment problem, that they also think that Democrats do. There is a new poll out, a survey from HuffPost and YouGov, and it says it finds that 76% of Republicans and Republican leaners think Democrats have a very or somewhat serious problem with sexual harassment, but just 40% of Republicans think that sexual harassment is a very or somewhat serious problem for their own party, while a slightly higher percentage, 43% of Republicans, thinks it is not an issue with their own party. A majority of Democrats, 60%, think their own party has a sexual harassment problem, while 75% of Democrats think sexual harassment is a very or somewhat serious problem with the GOP. What does this mean?
Well, I mean, this poll was really interesting, actually, if you look through it, because, I mean, you look at those top line numbers that you read, and it obviously seems to indicate that there's a lot of hypocrisy within the Republican base and not as much with the Democrat base. But if you look into the brass tacks, look through the numbers, there's some interesting figures. It said that in that same poll, it said that, for example, 77% of Democrats still support Bill Clinton, despite the fact that 68% of them believe that he probably or definitely committed sexual assault.
What does that mean to you?
That means that politics is all tribal these days. It's like it's all tribalism. There's very little principle. Like no one stands on anything. They just kind of like, we've sort of self-sorted within different camps, and we kind of just support whatever camp we're in. And
I think that's, while true, simplistic, because I don't think, nor do I think he should, that Bill Clinton could survive that now. So it is a little different to look back.
Well, Al Franken's surviving it, right?
Well, Al Franken has survived, but again,
and John Conyers.
Let's not pretend that what Bill Clinton was accused of is any way similar to what Al Franken's been accused of.
Obviously not.
They're in different galaxies, and we don't know if Al Franken's going to survive it. I bet he doesn't. I bet he quits. But I don't know. We'll find out. But it is more difficult in human nature to go back and assign blame after the fact. Bill Clinton gets accused of what he was accused of now, I don't think he would survive it. Although it is worth pointing out that that unlike every other charge against both people on the right and the left, that was funded, which did draw into question legitimately it felt at the time the veracity of some of the accusers. But I still don't think that he would survive it now.
You think he speaks to the DNC in 2020? I mean,
yes,
I think
do.
He probably does.
I think he probably does. I think as a former president, it probably trumps that. It would be bold to deny him, and you know, there's another living president. There's two, in fact. I mean, hopefully Jimmy Carter will still be around in 2020, but you know, you don't.
He's going to bring the house down,
Jimmy Carter.
So that would be interesting because that's a different, and you can obviously have his, you know, Hillary could speak as well. I just think that definitely factors into it. But as you know, a number of Democrats, at least publicly, have come out, written about, and spoken that they would reevaluate what Bill Clinton was accused of in light of the current climate and in light of how we now treat sexual harassment claims.
And the ones who came out strongest are running for president.
Yeah.
So this is when you talk about polls, this is a complicated question to learn something from. Because I think when there's the psychology of taking a poll where everyone's got their guns up. They know, and it's like, this is my chance to communicate something about myself and about someone's going to learn about the country from this, and I'm one of the 300 or 1,200 people that they're asking. And it's more simple to ask who are you voting for, and we can learn from that. What we can do is try to find like controls and things to balance against each other. And in this one, they asked the same question to Democrats and Republicans, and it seems like the Democrats are more self-aware of a problem and more likely to admit that there is something wrong.
I guess my point is that in general, they admit that there's a problem, but when it comes to like individuals, because they also the poll also showed that they still support Al Franken, even though they disagree with what he did and stuff. Like it's just like when it becomes different. It's like whenever
are you going to do something about it? Kind of thing.
Whenever there's a poll about like a candidate running against a generic Republican or like that, the generic person always wins because you can't.
You're not running against it. That is one thing that is all the Bernie supporters, and I was a Bernie supporter as well, here never quite got. Like there was never a campaign run against Bernie Sanders. The campaign would have been effective. He might have won. We'll never know. But there would have been a campaign against him instead of the campaign against Hillary. And then there would have been very specific things said about Bernie that kept it. None of that landed because there was no campaign. Always when you say perfect, it's essentially like saying you want this corrupt person or a perfect candidate to run against.
You're projecting all kinds of.
You're projecting all the best things about it.
Yeah, and the difference between those two things, it is like saying, poll 1, do you want 1,000 pounds of candy? Yes. Poll 2, do you want a stomach ache? No. Okay, there you go.
It's easier to say like, the Democrats have a sexual harassment problem, but then when you start to break, like, okay, what about this person? What about that person?
I object to the nature of the question. It's interesting, and I don't mean it shouldn't even be asked, but then. Like the notion that a sexual harassment problem would exist inside of a political party is of no more value than saying, do coffee drinkers have a sexual harassment problem?
Sure.
Of course they do. Men have a sexual harassment problem. A few women, but overwhelmingly men have a sexual harassment problem. And I imagine half of them are Democrats. Half of them are, many of them are independents. There's some libertarians also. That does not mark whether you have a sexual harassment problem or not. That only tells you that there may be that you may be able to use the hypocrisy argument more aggressively against one party rather than the other. But hypocrisy arguments
almost never work.
And also,
you're right. I did say something different last time.
I'm not interested in hypocrisy. Like I don't really. I mean, there's very rarely there's an argument about. First of all, I think hypocrisy tends to make people interesting. Right? Now, it depends on what the hypocrisy is. If your hypocrisy is gay people are sinners and they should go to hell or prison, and then it turns out you're gay, well, that's an interesting hypocrisy that I think we should point out. If your hypocrisy is, I said this then and now I've largely changed my mind, or I didn't realize I'd be in this situation, sorry. I'm not interested, that doesn't matter. I care about, for politicians, what have you done, what are you going to do? Not so much do we catch you in a little moment of hypocrisy.
I think it's the most important thing when you're looking at politicians is even beyond the individual is just like which power sectors in the society do they owe power to?
That's right.
And that always ends up being what they end up doing in office.
That's right,
anyway.
and a point that I this is an argument I have with Cenk a lot, or at least a thing that I focus on, and maybe overly, but like in addition to who do they owe allegiance to, right? Who do they owe power to? And then who is sitting at their table? Like who gets to sit at their table? Because that's almost sometimes a more powerful way, or at least a more positive way of putting it. Like, I mean, as you make policy, as you go forward, are there union people there? Is there somebody from the Consumer Financial Protection Board there? Are those people involved in a process of setting policy? That matters. That matters almost as you know, as Elizabeth Warren said, and many others have said as well, that personnel is policy. Who's sitting down with Donald Trump when he makes these decisions? And the answer for Trump is no one we like. No one in any circumstance.
The worst people in America.
The worst people in America are sitting there and doing it. That's so.
Al Franken, you think he's going to make it through? What do you think? What do you think should happen?
I think he should resign. I mean, especially the stakes are so low. I mean, because they have a Democratic governor, they would just replace him with another Democrat, and so they're not going to lose a vote in the Senate. Like the stuff, they stand to gain a lot more. First of all, if they're going to stand on any sort of principle, they should probably just, And the thing is, it's not like they're throwing the balance of the Senate off or anything like that. Like the stakes are just way lower.
It is. Yeah, I largely agree with you.
What if I like Al Franken's comedy?
It is.
It's like we can get into like a philosophical debate. Can you separate the art from the man?
Right. But
are you allowed to like a Woody Allen movie?
It will give us the moral high ground.
Yeah.
But I already think we have it. So it's frustrating that Al Franken will resign, and then Roy Moore will get elected to the Senate. There won't be an investigation. They won't not seat him. They'll seat him, and he'll be a United States Senator. And then in 3 years, he'll win again, this time with the proper Alabama Republican figure of 72% of the vote.
Right. And if Doug Jones wins, he'll live out the remainder of the term.
It's 3 years. It's 3 years. It's not nothing. It's not nothing. He'll be there until January of 2021, so it's not nothing. But yeah,
and then he'll go back to business as usual.
Although you never know, maybe he's able to sort of establish himself as a good old boy who's liked. Who knows? Unlikely. I suspect that Doug Jones. But my hunch is that
the treasurer of Alabama is a Democrat.
It is just frustrating in a sense that if Al Franken, and I got it, he should probably resign. But his sins on the list of people,
they don't compare.
His sins don't compare to, he's at the low end of a spectrum, but we're not allowed to have a spectrum because as soon as you have a spectrum, it seems like you're sort of dismissing. You don't want to be anywhere on the spectrum.
I think also the other problem with Al Franken is that there might be more coming out.
Well, that's the thing.
And he seems to
almost suggest that there might be. So that's the thing is that the worst thing to do is to have it little by little. Oh, you've survived it. Okay, survived one. She wrote a nice apology letter. Leanne Tweeden forgave him. Then it was one more, and then there are two now. Again, you can't slow bleed it. If there are 3 more next weekend, then you're just going to have to go.
And I think strategically for the Democrats, it's just they won't lose a vote.
That's right. You're right.
And they might as well just cut their losses and plow ahead.
I was watching an episode of Sarah Silverman, I Love You, America, and Al Franken was on it, and it was nice. And then at the end, their bit, there's a kiss. And this came out before that, and he kisses her on the mouth.
Well, he's a bit of a mouth kisser.
Awkward.
Which is always a weird thing.
Yeah, it's weird. When do you stop? When do you stop doing that? I think when...
It's like a really old-fashioned thing, right? Does anyone still do that? I think so. I don't know. I think that used to happen, but I don't know.
I don't like mouth kissing my wife.
I don't think my wife likes mouth kissing me, let's be honest about that.
Who would want to kiss me on the mouth?
No one. No one I know. No one I'd vote for Senate.
I'm kidding, sweetie. I'm kidding.
All right, let's move on to France.
Ooh.
You weren't kidding. All right, we're moving on to France. So, French President Emmanuel Macron wants to outlaw, quote, gender-based insults. During a speech at the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, he said verbal attacks, he wants them to come with a fine. So you'd be fined for saying, verbally disparaging things to women, which means Pepe Le Pew is going to jail. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He said, quote,
It's about damn time.
He is raping that cat. All right, the streets should not become hell for the women of France, he said, calling to seal a pact of equality between men and women. He announced plans to make the new rules within weeks. What do you think about, in France, it being a finable offense to
Is that what we're talking about, finable?
Yeah.
So not, no jail.
No jail, just a fine.
That's better.
It's better, yeah.
Better. Jail would be hideous.
Especially in a society like the French society, that kind of law will inevitably be used to police only black and brown people in the banlieues, not people that look like Emmanuel Macron.
Right.
There's more that they want to.
Let's say that Nando is a lot smarter than we are.
He's better traveled.
Yeah.
I always hear the thing that like France is super racist. True.
France is super racist. Europe in general is quite racist. There's a difference. So the racism that exists in Europe is largely because of a lot of the sort of superficial racism that we've kind of eliminated. Largely, we still have a huge amount of systemic racism and all that stuff, but you can't just go on TV and like say the N-word anymore. You know, like you'd be immediately fired. In Europe, there exists a lot more of that sort of de jure racism. It's much more acceptable still. I think largely because their immigrant communities are much newer. They haven't been fighting these sort of battles for hundreds of years like we have here. There's kind of an influx of non-white people into Europe, Western Europe after World War II. But it's super racist. Like, in the black and brown people within French society, and it's not just French society, it's in Spain and in Germany and all these places. Like, I mean, they have like race riots all the time because they're just completely cut out. They're just completely ghettoized and cut out. And there is no, like, I mean, the idea, I mean, we know that Barack Obama being elected didn't end racism in America, but that is so unthinkable in Europe for there to be a non-white, head of state or anything like that. It is just beyond anything imaginable. So yeah, it's super racist.
But to this, obviously the danger there is obvious because what constitutes an insult, right?
There are these weird laws in America about like stalking and verbally harassing women on the street, and it varies state to state. And some of them are so strangely worded. They're things like, well, if you're within 300 feet, if you follow someone for 1,000 feet, if you say disparaging things and make a physical threat, they try to put a finer point on it, but it's strange. It just depends on like what is the, I guess, way people typically go about making women feel uncomfortable in any given state.
The issue also is that in Western Europe, in France and Germany and places, they've outlawed basically like Nazi speech. They've outlawed the denial of the Holocaust is illegal. You can't just go out and be like wear Nazi paraphernalia on the street, and but that has not prevented the resurgence of a far right movement in many Western European countries, right? That often, I think the intent of these laws is genuine, but they don't always have they don't always achieve the intended goals.
Is it a waste of time?
I don't know. I mean, like you said, I mean, if this was a criminal, situation,
but isn't it criminal to wave the Nazi flag?
I think it is not a. I mean, it's not a useful. It's okay. Inevitably, like these.
I don't mean should it be? I mean, is it like couldn't you get jail time in France for?
You could, yeah.
Right.
But again, it hasn't. I just find it weird that they would sort of try to implement these laws and just without any sort of analysis of whether they are achieving the goals which they want to achieve.
I get it, but I do think there's something to be said for putting out a law that is like, this is what we stand for. This is one step in the process. We didn't get to a story today in the first hour that was about the gap between the rights that undocumented workers have and the ability to enforce those rights, to make sure that they're having them, because it's just like this weird game of chicken where they're like, yeah, you have rights, but I'll just deport you. I'm not going to give you your health coverage or like the mask you need to rebuild, after Hurricane Harvey.
Well, I think that's slightly different in that you could imagine how a state could enforce those laws. Policing sort of hate speech just strikes me as what'll inevitably happen is that things that we don't consider hate speech will then start be classified as hate speach, especially things that sort of challenge the establishment.
I think
the
you
power
got
structure, all that
to
stuff.
illegalize action. You can't criminalize. Excuse me. You can criminalize action. You can't criminalize speech. I don't like the slippery slope argument because it's usually an excuse sort of not to tackle a problem. But it is here. I mean, you could, and so if this law were a loosely written law about harassment on the street, then maybe you get away with it. You can't follow somebody. You can't threaten them. And
that's a different thing, right? I mean, a direct threat to someone is, but like I don't know.
What do you think of these? What do you think of these other rules that they're putting forward that he mentioned? France is also considering a series of rules that would make it easier for victims to report instances of sexual assault to police.
Yeah, great.
Those measures would include extending to the statute of limitation on rape of a minor to 30 years from the current 20.
Can't see that being a big societal change, but that seems like
and it seems very clear that one of the big problems with sexual assault is the inability for women to come forward and report it to some independent institution outside of whatever, like their employer or which again is not, the structures of their own employment are not built to help her. They're built to protect themselves, right?
If we've seen any indication that that's true, if anyone doubted that, we have seen the unwillingness to report violent sexual assault. All sexual assault is violent, but even particularly violent sexual assault from people who we would presume had power.
Yeah,
actresses in Hollywood, people, some of them famous. And still, so imagine if they felt like no good comes of this, nothing good comes of this, how powerless people on the streets of the United States or France would feel. So in general, those laws, that makes sense.
There's another one that says victims could also file initial rape complaints online, and public transit may start offering an on-demand service which would let women get off at any point on their bus routes instead of just designated stops. Food for thought. It might make the buses later in France.
Well, like the bus you're driving right now.
Yeah, like the bus I'm driving right now, but buses on time in France doesn't happen. All right, so we're gonna take a break. Don't go away, give us your thoughts online, especially me making a joke during that segment at #TYT Live, and we'll see you after the break.
Do you trust the establishment media?
The United States economy has never been better. Monetary policy is spectacular.
Everybody thought Jamie Dimon was the king of Wall Street last week. Well, it might be Ken Lewis now. He takes the crown. The best sales force out there is Merrill Lynch, and now it goes to BofA. It's pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing. Lewis now. Buying opportunity.
I do think this is a buying opportunity. We're going to see a stabilization and just a tremendous snapback.
The rally will be jaw-dropping.
The Occupy Wall Street movement is not a spontaneous protest against economic inequality.
This is what we mean by the establishment press.
It is a well-thought-out campaign.
To bring down the infrastructure of this country.
The embarrassment is that I'm given credibility in this world because of the disappointment that the public has in what the news media does.
I'm the former chairman of the Veterans Committee, and I've learned a little bit about the cost of war. What the president is trying to do, and I agree with him, is to do everything that we can without going to war.
So what do you say to your critics? I'm talking about Democratic critics who say, you know what, he's really just a socialist pacifist.
I very rarely read in any coverage of Bernie that he's a socialist.
Bernie Sanders is a socialist, for God's sake.
Most analysts are saying that Hillary Clinton's going to win in a landslide.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
We've got Trump at 279, 259.
Wait a minute. I know you don't believe that. Sorry to laugh.
We're not going to be polite anymore. You know what we're going to do? We're going to fight back.
Fight for a free and independent media. We're done with politeness. We fight back. We are going to put together the best investigative reporting team in the country. You like Jordan Chariton in the field, challenging Democrats? He's the one that took down Donald Brazil. Thank God for that.
You know, give me 10 Jordan Charitons. Look at the damage I could do.
TYT will give you the 4 horsemen.
And we will let them gallop. Help unleash real journalism in the country.
We don't need anybody else anymore but you guys. TYTnetwork.com/go. This is going to be amazing.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I want to do a YouTube live clip, but not live. Go.
Welcome back to the film Xanadu, where that music seemed like it came from. All right, we have no time left in the hour, so we're gonna get right to this story about the Grammys.
Yes.
The Grammy nominations have come out, and officially this is the first time since 1999 that there are no white men nominated for Album of the Year. The nominees are,
what about Record of the Year? What about Song of the Year?
They're different. They're definitely different.
I don't know that difference. I don't know why that's different.
The difference is that they have 3 awards to give out. And so they give those. Right. And I always look it up every single year.
I don't understand it.
And immediately forget it.
I think because Record of the Year should be Album of the Year, but Record of the Year is Song of the Year. So I don't know what Song of the Year
I think it's like a production totally thing. Yeah. All right, let's go to the nominees. Just that graphic, the one that we have for this. They are Awaken My Love by Childish Gambino, AKA Donald Glover. Melodrama by Lorde. 444, Jay-Z, Damn, Kendrick Lamar, and 24 Karat Magic by Bruno Mars. This hasn't happened since 1999 that there are no white men nominated. If you ask the Washington Post, they say, well, there are white guys in the band Garbage the last time this happened. So it really has never, ever happened. But then again, there's like 3 white producers on Gambino's album.
I used to love Garbage.
Did you?
Big fan.
So what does this mean? Does anyone care that there's, what is this an accomplishment?
No, I don't
think
this
is the
anybody,
Grammys.
Certainly, I can't imagine anybody caring.
No, people care. People care.
I care about the Grammys.
People get so mad about the Grammys all the time.
No, I know, but I mean, I know what is there. I mean, like, there's no bigger fan of white guy rock music than I.
Right. I just feel like we're not pulling our weight this year.
Right.
Well, rock and roll is dead. That's the big story.
Rock and roll is not dead, but it is the times are changing. That's fine, and also there's a billion artists. So some years it's just it's not like in 1979 there weren't literally as many bands. There weren't as many. There's so many ways to. I think right that were because it was. Hard.
I don't know how many bands there were. I don't have that in front of me.
No,
the 1979 band count.
Are you leading this hour? Or are you not leading this hour?
I know. I have a list of people who got snubbed.
Right,
of whites who were snubbed. This is the first time that in 14 years that there are no country artists in the top categories. So that's a big thing. Country also.
They have their own thing.
They have the ACAs. Yeah. Whatever they are, CMAs. They have the ADA bathrooms. Ed Sheeran had the #2 album sales this year.
All right.
Lady Gaga.
He's not white, he's pink.
He is pink. He's he was in Game of Thrones. He needs no more laurels. Lady Gaga.
She's a woman.
Katy Perry never won a Grammy.
This is no white people.
All right, so that's really it. All the guys in One Direction except Zayn.
Right.
Didn't get nominated, and they had very successful years this year.
Did John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band, did they put out an album this year?
I hope so. Yeah. Actually, I do have that in front of me.
They're not tough enough.
I couldn't name a single, I just remember the Grammys every year, people get very angry about whoever won, and then no one remembers who actually won a month later.
Last year, Beyonce was snubbed from this category.
For Lemonade.
And the idea that Jay-Z, who is her husband, if you weren't aware, that he might win this year. It's a big thing. And people are wondering what that might seem,
so
the fallout.
In 2008, I think it was, Bruce Springsteen wrote the song "The Wrestler" for The Wrestler, a movie, Darren Aronofsky movie, the Mickey Rourke, which I love. That was great.
He's a wrestler.
It was a beautiful, beautiful song, and it didn't get nominated for an Oscar. And they only nominated 3 songs.
Ooh.
Like they're allowed to nominate 5, and they didn't. They only nominated 3, and it wasn't. You're like, hey, what are you people waiting for? Like, So I'm not sure that and there was some long explanation of what the music branch of the Academy and why that was and what they got wrong. But it's hard. There's 1,000 different artists, and it's incredibly competitive.
Yeah. They say that there are no white men, but Lorde was nominated. And if you watch South Park, that is, I think Kyle's dad is Lorde. One of their dads is Lorde. So that doesn't really hold.
Ella Marija Lani Yelich O'Connor.
Is that Lorde?
That's Lorde.
Lorde's great. I love watching the Grammys because the performances are frequently quite good.
Yeah, especially lately, I think they up the ante.
Yeah. Speaking of up the ante, we're going to give you our highest production value video of the day right now. It is Christmas season, everyone, even at the White House.
Say holiday season. I'm insulted.
Well, this is a Christmas video. It is fine for Ben Mankiewicz. For the mishpucha, we're gonna go. Ben Mankiewicz wants you to know that it is holiday season at the White House. Melania Trump was taking people around on a tour of the Christmas and Hanukkah decorations, and Judy Kurtz came around a corner and saw this happening. She's a journalist. Watch this video, please. What's happening?
What's happening to America? Well, that's crazy.
That happens every year. There's always the first lady has to decorate the home.
Not standing there like a Stepford wife, man.
Could she have won? Is there any way Melania can win in that situation?
I think Melania is a political prisoner. We should free her immediately. It's a cry for help. That's clearly. I mean, she's from Eastern Europe. They love ballet in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, just
we need to free her.
The image of what's going on, what's happening in her head during that dance number.
I could just imagine the Curb Your Enthusiasm ending music, just like she zooms in on her face,
This piece says it's unclear if the answers were a surprise for the First Lady or a planned affair, but she didn't look particularly overjoyed. She didn't.
It's amazing.
It's very weird.
She also, it's weird that the First Lady has to decorate is in charge of decorating. Right. Of course, she doesn't really do a lot of that stuff, but does that mean that, some say it's sexist that the First Lady has to do it, but would Bill Clinton have had to do this? I would have loved to see that.
Well, would he have been kicked out of the White House after all these sexual harassment allegations?
Everybody. There's a tweet that went out. There are also other decorations on this tour. Someone I followed, what is her name? Let's look at it. The Duet.
That's scary.
Spooky.
Yeah, that's like looks like the Nightmare Before Christmas.
So this is Jess Dweck points out, showing the clamshell from Ivanka Trump that was terrifying. The design aesthetic of the Trump women is the rotting void inside us.
That's what I'm saying. It's a cry for help. They're clearly saying like, get us out of here. They're like sending Morse code with their eyelids.
I just can't get over that video.
How strange everything is.
Yeah, it's weird.
We live in a strange time.
We live in a very strange time.
I don't like any performance just for one person either. I don't like people singing to me.
Right. Happy birthday, like on your birthday.
I dated a girl who said, when she said we didn't get married, but she would like if we got married, that she had a nice voice, and she was like, she'd sung in college. She was like, oh, I'm going to sing to you at our wedding, and I was like, that's a non-starter.
Like Marilyn Monroe for Jack Kennedy saying happy birthday.
Yeah, that would have been. I would have found that incredibly awkward. I wouldn't have known where to look.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea that the looks on the faces of the dancers when they turn around and face the camera of just like this very big smile. Yeah. It's terrifying. She does look like she's one of the kids from The Shining standing there. Like, and in her mind, she's just thinking, you guys see them too, right? This is happening. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this second hour. Fernando, Ben, and join us tomorrow on TYT with different faces. Bye-bye.